Hello everybody, thank you for hopping on. Welcome. Okay everybody, welcome to How to Stand Out the Adjudication. We're going to chat about the adjudication process and our classes at Armstrong Acting Studios. I'm going to invite in Susanna Fournier, my artistic director. While I do that, I just quickly wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Nakato. For those of you who don't know, I am the studio owner at Armstrong. And I'm really excited to hop on here and chat with Susanna today, just to give you guys a little sneak preview into the adjudication at the studio and get, the conversation going about our summer term because it started today and we're very excited about it. So I'm really excited to chat with Susanna. Hop on, but yeah, we have some wonderful questions today. We have some great discussion points that were brought to our attention from some of you that reached out with some questions in advance, and then we'll open up to a Q&A at the end for any questions that are popping up as we're chatting. Hi, Susanna.
Sarah, so good to be here.
So good to see you. Thank you. I was just chatting with everybody. Obviously, you did your live last week, kind of about the agenda for today. As I mentioned, I'm Sarah Nakato. I'm the studio owner. And Susanna, why don't you take it away with your title?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm the artistic director at Armstrong Acting Studios, and I have been a instructor at the studio since about 2016, and as well as a resident coach since about 2018. So I have instructed pretty much every level of course that we teach here at the studio. I have coached self-tapes, developmental sessions, theater auditions, done chemistry tests, helped actors secure representation, help actors come through on their callbacks, and have taught both our youth divisions as well as our adult divisions. Outside of Armstrong, I'm also a theater maker, a playwright, and a director and a producer myself. So I have really uniquely positioned that I understand a lot of various roles and positions within the acting industry and in either theater creation or film creation. So I really love that I can bring the perspective of being a director myself, being an actor myself, and being a writer to help actors understand really how to situate their work inside of a really collaborative process. So it's been a gift to work with the hundreds of actors that I've worked with at Armstrong. And I'm so excited to be talking about the showcase adjudication today because I think it's something that is so special and so important in our actor training. And it's such a also celebratory way to end out a term at the studio.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's very cool to talk about the structure today. Susanna, obviously, you hear about that background. There's no question why she's our artistic director. So, as somebody who designs our courses and who is hands-on in the adjudication, it's going to be lovely to hear from this perspective. I started at the studio in 2015, and it's so interesting. Obviously, here we are in a new era, but the adjudication, AKA, I have phrased it in the past as the showcase, kind of to your point of it does serve a function in the industry, what we're preparing actors to do, but it is also a celebration of the work itself. And, after, for example, a 12-week course, if that's your 13th class, it kind of adds on a different level of pressure like the industry would, with having someone come in the space. It's not your instructor who's there to guide you through those, those 12 classes. So I'm excited to hear your perspective about that. But before we even get into any of that, Susanna, I'm going to start with the basic. For those that do not know, what is an adjudication at Armstrong?
Yeah, so an adjudication, or a showcase, as we often call it, is the culminating, it's not a full class, but whether your course is 9 weeks or 12 weeks at the studio, we will have either in that 9th final class or in a 12-week structure, a 13th class, which is an opportunity to come in without your instructor, right? So you've finished your course, you spent 9 or 12 weeks unpacking process, learning theory, experimenting, trying things out, working really one-on-one with your instructor as your coach, implementing that theory, and getting really comfortable in performing in front of your peers, supporting each other, taking risks, learning from watching others. And then the class is over and you get the opportunity to come in and show your work to me, the artistic director. And I will be in the studio as you would if you were showing up to a professional audition and getting to show your work to a casting director. So it's a chance for you to amalgamate everything that you have learned and you've been testing and to go for yourself, okay, great. Like the best case scenario is that you feel super comfortable in the class in front of your peers with your coach, and you're able to deliver the kind of top-notch version of what you've been working on. But let's switch up the variables a bit, right? Let's formalize it. Let's turn it into more like a professional audition where you're going in by yourself, you're meeting a casting director, which you may have never met before, and you're going to do an audition. And you're not going to do a stop start. You're not going to get a redirect. You know, occasionally I may give a redirect. It has happened, but the chance is to test your ability to deliver the best of your work, no matter where you are and no matter who's in the room, and to test, can I bring it? I think of it like playoffs, right? You have an amazing season. I mean, Toronto Leafs fans, like, we know this story, right? You could have an amazing season, and then it's like, can you bring it with a little bit more pressure, or when we change up the variables? So it's a chance not only for me to see all of the students here at the studio who I haven't worked with, to come in as a pair of fresh eyes and be able to give them a kind of litmus test. This is where your work is reading today, right? And it's also a chance for them to go, was I able to execute what I know I'm capable of? Or what happened, right? Like, if we just single out one audition, which doesn't make or break you as an actor, but it's like, what was I able to do on this day? If I was auditioning for a total strange director, what might their impression of my work be? So it's an important, we're very process-based during the work in the term, and the adjudication is a chance for us to just look at, what is the product? How is all that learning sitting? Is it executing? Is it consistent? Can you bring it when you maybe are a bit more nervous, or the situation is a bit more different? So that's an important thing for us to know as actors, because the majority of our work is auditioning for people we don't know.
Well, yeah, it's a great point, because I do love the fine balance that we strike when it comes to the adjudication at the studio, because it is a simulation of the real life audition. So, you have actors who will say, oh, well, before they're filming a self-tape or they're going through an audition, I had all this work done, I wanted to do all these things, but at the end of the day, if it's not translating in the frame, it is rare that a casting director will give you that opportunity to explain what you wanted to do. All we see is what you actually do, right? Only as coaches do we get that behind the scenes.
It's whatever lives in the frame, that's reality, right? So I'm sure we've all had this experience. Definitely, I remember being early as an actor and this feeling of like, but it worked in my living room,
Yeah.
I was practicing my car, and I was able to hit that emotional peak, or I was able to be grounded and focused and feel really in my body and connect. And then I got up in front of the lights. I'm actually at the studio right now. It's like you get up in front of the blue, and suddenly there's a camera and there's lights and there's people. Am I still able to find that focus to tap in, to connect down to what I want and what the story is about? Because I'm not in my car, my living room, and I'm not in the comfort of my own home practicing wherever I practice, right?
Exactly. And yes, 100%, we're all Meryl Streep in our living room, but at the end of the day, it's also this nice, again, the balance is that despite trying to simulate the real audition, this is your playground as actors at the studio. So you get to go and you get to put yourself in that, let's just say, higher pressure, higher stakes situation like a real audition, knowing that you're still in a space that is a learning space, and it's a very supportive space. So it's a nice place to try to learn the audition, especially the in-person audition, as we kind of exit a very virtual industry that we will maintain, but get ready to get back in person. I have so many actors who started during COVID and they don't know what it's like to be in a real audition, and this is kind of your first taste of it.
Yeah. It's a great simulation. Let's say you make it, your self-tape goes through the first round, right? And then you get a callback, and it could be a Zoom callback, or they could actually have the director and they want to bring you into the room. If you've never experienced a simulation of that, you could be very destabilized. You could be very in your head. You could be very freaked out about your work. And so it is a chance to prepare you for the industry reality of a director session or a chemistry test. But also, what I say to every actor in a showcase is, or being on set. Like, the first day you show up to set, whole bunch of new people. There's 100 people around you all doing stuff. You've never met any of them before. You're meeting your scene partner for the first time. You're in a costume. Like everything is new, 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 new. And then you might just be meeting the director for the first time, and suddenly you have to translate what you did in your audition in this entirely different environment. Maybe they've changed the writing. Maybe they've, you know, maybe you're like, oh, I didn't think I was going to be like in a hallway during this scene walking. Like, you know, so as actors, to be so adaptable, to still be able to tune in, think about what we want in the scene, what is the story we're telling, what is the emotional reality of this character. If you put me in a submarine or I'm riding an elephant, like, and who knows, I might not know until I'm there what the conditions are going to be like.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's a that.
No, it's great what you said. It shakes you up, and you know, you can speak to this better as we get more into it. But yes, we are going from weeks and weeks of process to a place of what is the product, but we still take into consideration the weeks leading up to that could get you to whatever product you gave out on that day. So for example, if you go into your showcase and you know you put in all this work and you feel like you're going to nail it, and then that day it's just not the day for the work to shine through, we take that into consideration. But it also kind of can help the actor by way of being curious about, okay, so if I felt like I did all this work and I had all this growth, what happened on that final day that made me feel I could not deliver? Because being curious about that can help avoid it in the future, so you always feel like you're thriving in that situation.
Get to test out, you know, and a big one, I want to come back to this, is nerves. We're going to talk about nerves a lot later, but we get to test out for the actor, you know, we can learn from, it's a training institute, it's a studio, right? It's not confronting that part of your process at a third chemistry test and losing a major motion picture deal because, oh God, I got hijacked and I kind of bombed, right? So it's still a low stakes environment. We still know that we're in the process of learning. We're, you know, and, you know, the adjudication serves to, yes, it gives the actor that experience, but also, of course, I'm coming into the adjudication understanding what level of training the actor is at, right? So something we get asked a lot about the studio is, you know, why are there different levels of training? Why do we have core acting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And that's because you can't learn acting in a 36-hour course, an 18-hour course. Developing the craft of acting is a lifelong pursuit. You know, we all know the thing, it's like takes 10,000 hours to make a master out of anything. So I always like to think of acting, it's more like a sport. I think of it like training like a sport. You know, we see different tiered, you know, we have the professional leagues, we have the minor leagues, we have the rookie leagues, we have the amateur leagues. And when we think about acting, we want to see in a core 1 adjudication, I'm looking for the student to demonstrate that they have mastered to a certain degree the concepts that we're teaching at core 1, which are foundational concepts of acting, which are, you know, getting the actor in touch with their body as a tool of storytelling, their breath, their voice. Are they playing clear wants and tactics in the frame? Do they feel comfortable in the frame? Does it feel natural, right? So I'm watching the adjudication through the lens of, what has this been actor working on? What is the level of difficulty of theory that they're learning to apply? So, you know, I'm not going to compare a core 1 showcase to like a core 5, which is our highest level master level class, right? We're going to see two different performances, but that doesn't mean a core 1 student isn't absolutely going to kill their adjudication and really be demonstrating how well they've taken the concepts at core 1. And so that's also an indication for me that, hey, this actor's ready for more challenge. They nailed that showcase. That was inspired. That was exciting. They seemed confident. They were having fun. They were really in their body, on their voice. Great. They're ready to take their training to the next level. We can invite them back for, do you want to take a core 2 class? You know, do you want to take embodying action and impulse, one of our supplementary complementary courses? So it serves two things. Yes, we can evaluate where the student is sitting in terms of the industry standard of what makes a professional actor. And we can also help tell the student, like, hey, based on your work and the notes we've gotten from your instructor, we think you're ready to train at a higher level. And then, you know, that they can make that decision about whether they want to take on some more challenges or whether potentially they want to stay at that level and keep working with the material and the concepts at that level. Because it's not like, oh, you got to core 5, like you won acting. Like that's just, sadly, that is just not how it works, right?
No, I appreciate the discussion around the structure of the studio, because I think it can be in our minds, especially when we think of education, we do put it in terms of it's that childhood grade idea, right? You just want to keep moving up. You want to get that A plus. But the reality is I like that you use the word master. Of course, we're always evolving. You don't win acting, to your point.
Sadly.
As artists, you always have a new set of challenges, but you can master, again, the skills that we are teaching you, the tools that we are teaching you, and begin to apply them. And I personally would prefer to master a skill and stay at something until I did that, instead of feeling like I was being thrown into a deep end just to move up a level, only to feel like I only half understood what this concept was, and now I'm getting thrown more advanced concepts. And overall, the goal is not about the level, it's about you as an actor. So the adjudication, you're right, is a nice clean snapshot into that, while also introducing, okay, and also this is industry standard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does both things at the same time, because I'll say to tons of students, we want to make sure that you're ready to be, playing and acting and, kind of in the ring with actors that I always say you always want to be with someone who's a little bit better than you.
Absolutely.
You rise to the occasion, right? You're like, oh my God, like this person is like, I have to be here. Like they are present, they are connected, they are really bringing it. It makes us better, right? We always want to be with the peers who are just slightly better at something than us. If we have the humility to acknowledge that, that's where we're going to do our best learning. But this idea, we live in such a product-oriented culture, this idea like, oh, I did a weekend workshop on whatever, and now I know everything about it. Like, acting is always changing. It changes as we learn about ourselves. It changes as we age. Like you could be killing it in the teen genre, and then suddenly you don't know how to audition for a medical procedural because no one's ever asked you to play a doctor before.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and that's why we stretch out the age ranges in our playables, right? Like there is so many. And for those of you watching who have, kind of grown up at the studio, I have so many people that I've seen them from when they were little kids to now they're in their mid-20s, and you go through multiple transitionary stages. And that's why we keep our classes in playable age ranges, adults being, obviously, we get into adulthood. But when it comes to our youth classes, we keep it 10 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 18, because at all those junctures, you kind of switch in terms of like content and maturity, and also the types of roles you're auditioning for at that point, because they demand different things. So, no, I want to kind of, so the importance of the final showcase kind of coming from, we give them a snapshot of industry standard. It also allows us to have an insight as to where you will be best placed at the studio to make sure that you are utilizing your time and you are mastering those skills in the way that we feel you need to. The biggest question that is coming up, usually comes up in showcases, but is coming up as we're chatting, is, when you get to that final class, or even just leading up to it, heck, even in the first class, dealing with nerves. Yeah. When we talk about, oh my goodness, high pressure, that is inherent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned something. I had the opportunity to be a reader for several casting directors in the city. And that was such an amazing opportunity for me, because I used to have this idea that I was kind of like guilty until proven innocent. Like, oh my God, I'm going to do this audition, and the director's just judging me, and like so stress mind, right? Like just like paranoid stress mind, because I was nervous. And then when I got to be a reader, I realized, oh my gosh, the casting director is rooting for me. The casting director wants me to be the actor that we're like, great, we found the person, job over. Like, great, look at how exciting and amazing this performance is. And I got to see how, one, every actor that came in the room was nervous. Like, I'm not the only, like, we always think we're the only one, or like, it's the worst. But it's not. Everyone was nervous. I saw actors flub lines, didn't matter. Casting was like, yeah, take it back, or keep going. Like, not a big deal. I saw like all kinds of things. And I also got to see that my work was competitive. And that was a huge relief for me. And I changed my whole attitude about auditioning. And my auditions started going much better, because I didn't think anyone was out to get me. I thought people were rooting for me, and how great it is that casting keeps bringing me in. Like, it really taught me that your job as an actor is, yes, hopefully you'll get the job, but your job is to maintain showing that casting director amazing auditions so that they feel really excited to bring you in and show you to the Netflix series they're casting. They're like, you got to see Sarah. Like, Sarah comes in every project we ask her to audition for. She's like a solid choices, bold, exciting. She's ready. You know, that's your job, is to maintain that relationship. So when I come in the room, and usually, you know, like, it kind of reminds me of first class. Like when I come in as a teacher, first class, everyone's kind of like, okay, like I'm here, I don't know anyone, like why did I sign up? Why did I sign up for acting? Like, was this a good, you know, just a bit nervous, a bit sweaty pits, you know, everyone's kind of quiet, like no one's laughing. So my job as an instructor is like, let's acknowledge that. Let's work from where we are. Like, I'm here to have fun. I'm here to take chances. We love, for some reason, we all love acting. Let's spend, you know, this time together. So when I come into an adjudication, nerves is the first thing I talk about. You know, I'm always like, who's nervous? And like, I put up my hand, you know, like I'm excited for the actors. Like, I'm rooting for them. Right. And, you know, I talk about the reason we do the adjudication. Depending on the age group, I might say like, yeah, where do we feel that nervousness in the body, right? Let's not try to push it down. Because like, has anyone in the history of a human being ever made themselves not nervous when they are?
No, you just don't do the task at hand. I always say, right, when you're trying to not be nervous, you're trying to accomplish that instead of actually just doing the scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So the way about acting is you're occupying two realities at the same time. Like, you're both an actor pretending, you know, committing to doing a scene and gesturing and speaking and doing, that's really happening. But you're also a character who's in a completely different situation and has to be committed to that imaginative reality. So if we can acknowledge that we are nervous, the actor is nervous. Mm-hmm. The character is also probably in a high stakes situation. They're also probably doing something very important to them.
Yeah.
So can we connect? Can we go, yes, Susanna is nervous, but like Charlotte is feeling really confident about this deal she just signed as a new lawyer at blah, blah, blah. So while Susanna's nervous, she also has to occupy extreme confidence, right?
Yeah.
And we find how those two things can live in the same body, you know, and so develop those techniques. A huge thing I do when I'm nervous, I like to ground myself. You know, I like to feel the body, feel my feet on the floor, like connect to a personalized memory that helps me remember what it is to feel that confidence or to feel that intimacy or whatever the scene is about. And then I make sure to connect with the reader, my scene partner.
Yeah,
because they're in it with.
Yeah, they're your lifeline.
Yeah. Yeah, they're there to help me. They're on the script, you know, they have, you know, like, we're in this together. And I ground myself in the room, and then I ground myself in the imaginative reality of the scene. And that's what you have to do, because even on set, you might be like in an amazing period piece wearing a gown in a castle, but reality is there's also a dude holding, like, usually a dude, holding a boom mic, like, just over there, and potentially like a giant camera, you know, right here, that you're like, I'm just pretending that like that's not here. So we always have to do this double reality as actors, and we need to get comfortable practicing, how do I address this moment, even though my armpits are sweating profusely, maybe my knees are shaking, and I don't know if I can find my voice. Okay, I need to breathe. I need to get on my voice, you know? So we have to also develop those skills.
No, I like that a lot. And like, kind of this idea, I love that you're introducing, of using it. It's a mindset shift. It's that concept of, you say acknowledge, and yeah, I will add on like embracing it, because we've decided in our minds that nerves have a negative connotation to them.
Yeah. And
the reality is it's really good that you're nervous, because otherwise I would suggest maybe pursuing a different industry at that point, you know. It's truly, right? Like, you use my favorite examples of professional sports. People often are like, you know, it's their first class and they want to join the NHL. And I'm like, well, you have to learn to just put on your skates. And so right when you shift from this is a bad thing to this is a good thing, it means I care.
Yeah.
Well, it's competitive out there. I better care.
Yeah.
And then you're able to embrace it and use it. And right when you embrace it and use it, all those things that we fear when we are nervous, like I'm going to forget my lines, or they're judging me, they kind of go away, because then the focus is not on those things. If you're focusing on those things, they're probably going to happen. And the final thing I'll add to that, because I love what Susanna said about your reader kind of being, I just got to connect to this person, because yes, most of our audition sides are high stakes situations. Even, in comedy, obviously we have those really high stakes, but also really high energy that you can use in your body.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, just making that adrenaline pumping through your body, the thing of like, cool, I'm going to take all this awesome life energy in me and connect to you and spend the next however many minutes affecting you. And then we'll come out together and see you on the other side. You know what I mean?
Exactly. A scene exists between the actors inside of it. It's not one-sided. You're not generating the entire experience. And I think trusting that, which can be really scary, trusting that is a huge part of giving over to the shared co-authorship of the story. And that's a more advanced, that's something we address in core 4 and core 5. But, we have to be able to, I love the point that you said, camera's going to see what's actually going on. Right? So if you're nervous and trying to suppress your nerves, that's what camera's going to see. It's going to see someone who's pushing down an experience rather than a character who is engaged in a fluctuating experience. I want to kind of segue into, because I'm so excited by the winter term showcases that were just released and have been online, and I didn't know which ones ultimately you were going to select. So just to kind of let folks in who are watching, as I'm watching all the adjudications from every level, core 1 all the way through core 5, there are definitely standout auditions that I will always make note of, right? And like this term especially, there was so much phenomenal work that I was like, I don't know how anyone's going to decide, because there was so much talent to choose from. But I do, kind of send a short list to you, and then you're able to ultimately kind of review them. And then, so it's another set of fresh eyes. They've kind of gone through my eyes and they go over to Sarah's. So I wanted to segue into these recent winter term showcases that came out, and we've released the top 5. And what stood out to you when you were watching those takes, having not worked with these actors you didn't see them all term, I did, but I'm curious about what grabbed you about the work.
It's a great question. And yeah, I was very excited when I was watching them, because it made my job really hard in a really fantastic way. When you can't decide which top 5 showcases you were going to kind of celebrate, that's great problems to have. For me, it was, again, just a sneak preview into like a little snapshot of what Susanna saw. It was authenticity. And I say that word intentionally because I think in this industry, we throw around the words natural, grounded, real, which can get a little wonky. Yeah, it's nothing we're doing is actually real. Our job is to make it look as such.
Yeah.
Right. So I say authenticity because without, necessarily even knowing some of these actors myself, I felt like I very quickly saw who they were in the work. And it was the beautiful concept of being messy. It was the moments that surprised me. It was the choices that I was like, oh, I actually, and some of those scenes, I knew those scenes, and they're very phenomenally written scenes. And just to be like, wow, you really made that your own, and you decided that perfection does not exist here, because God knows it does not. That's what won me over with our top 5 showcases, was feeling like I was watching a fellow human who also was not perfect.
Yes.
And was also like in the moment trying to navigate this crazy thing we call life,
I love that you bring up the word messy, right? Because I feel like in this era of self-tapes, we have, as actors, become micromanaging, like specific, like beat to beat, right? Like, oh my gosh, but my eyebrow moment, because we're watching with and so there's this danger of doing like 10 takes, 15 takes, and really over, like I like a medium rare steak. Like I don't want a well done, chewy. No offense to y'all who eat well done meat, but it's like we think we're perfecting an audition by controlling every single beat. But actually what we're doing is we're flattening the work, and we're taking out all the spontaneity, and we're taking out the dynamism of those impulses, letting them fire, trusting that we've done our technique, trusting that we've done our scene analysis, and that we can now just play and let those impulses and those tactics drive our performance to a place maybe we weren't expecting it. So I love that messy is not, there's the there is a messy take, which is like, well, that was a hot mess and it's not telling the story, and we need to like make some adjustments because the technique is messy, versus that was a beautiful technique portrayal of a messy human. And
Well, exactly.
that is so exciting, to give ourselves permission as actors that humans are not, they are a hot mess, especially when the stakes are high.
Yeah.
I love that that stood out for you. I mean, I
Well,
always think actors, like, I'm looking for a balance of technique and abandon. And when we
yeah.
have a technique, we can let the wildness of spontaneity and impulse guide our performance, right? If we have too much technique, it's very controlled,
Mhm.
right? It becomes predictable, the work. If we have too much abandon, we might not tell the story. Like, we'll be like, well, those were a lot of impulses, but they weren't focused towards what the scene needs. So for me, when I look at a showcase, I'm usually looking like, where's the balance right now for that actor? Is there enough technique in place that they can give over to abandon? You know, how is that doing? I was thinking about
into the second thing, I think courage is kind of ties into that, because I think when you're in a high stakes situation, a high pressure situation, like an audition or a showcase, it's easy to kind of fall into this world of what I say, like one noted, like it feels safer to just not commit to anything too much in terms of what you're doing in the work, because it's that fear of what if it looks stupid, what if it looks silly, what if it doesn't work. So I really appreciated our top 5 actors just going for it, and it was honestly, it was so interesting. I was so focused also on what the reader was saying to them, which I find, you know, a lot of auditions can feel one-sided. It can feel like, here I am, you are not my scene partner, this is an audition, I'm just going to talk at you, then talk to you. And how I knew those actors were connected was I would watch them, and then I was like, what is this person going to say back to them, and how is that going to affect them? When I'm listening to the reader, I believe the relationship.
We believe that we want to watch the story, right? Like that, it's so, sometimes I continually challenging actors to go, what's an actor's job? And you hear a lot of reacting. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's actually not your job. Your job is to tell the story. The job, the reason we're there because the audience is watching the story. You know, they're not watching your feelings. Your as a job as an actor is not to have feelings. It's to tell a story that will include, yes, some feelings and tactics and wants. You bring up courage, and I think I was so blown away. I got the privilege of working with the actors in the top 5 showcase this term. And, you know, some of them have been training at the studio from the IOC level. They have trained at the studio for years. And I think they are such a beautiful example of what is possible when someone really commits to trying something and then sticking with it, and building that time on deck and committing those hours, not trying to race through the levels just to get a gold star, but to say, I want to invest in an authentic development of myself as an actor, and I'm committed to spending years doing that. You know, I don't know, I've been acting now for 20 years. Like, I feel like I'm always learning and figuring it out. When I think about the commitment, we have a scene like our top showcase. We have a scene that is ferocious. These 2 women who are just yelling at each other, saying awful things to each other in like heightened emotional crisis, completely driven by instinct and reactivity. And at one point the reader is just screaming, right? Like the reader just screams.
Yeah.
And that scene does not work if you don't fully commit to the emotional stakes of that situation, right? And so I think we get so afraid. It's easy for us to get afraid as actors of, I don't want to be too big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you confront this with coaching clients all the time, right? Like, oh, I don't want to blow out the frame, or like, I don't want to be seen as overacting. But our impulses and our choices as actors, they have to be the size, they have to be in line with the stakes.
I think
And
we've misdefined, like I think we think of big as a certain thing, whereas big just means fake, in my opinion. It just means disconnected from something that feels truthful in the moment to you, right?
yeah, we're worried about being big. And I love that we're using the word big incorrectly. We're actually talking about being fake or inauthentic or not connected. Whatever size size an impulse is, if it is in line with the authenticity, with the stakes, it can be whatever size it needs to be. Like I always talk about, like Joaquin Phoenix has made some pretty big choices, but we're not like, ooh, too much, you know, because they make sense for what his character is going through. They make sense, a life or death emotional situation or physical situation. So I love seeing in these top 5 showcases the commitment to pursuing a performance in which impulses are allowed to rise and be the size that they are, and work their way through the body or the voice in the way that makes sense, which lands that tactic. And you know, in the top 5 showcases, we have a real diversity of like internalized, like very delicate, nuanced, like seeing that subtlety of thought activity in the eyes. The voice is very pulled in, it's very intimate. We also have very externalized performances where the body language is loud, aggressive, they're taking up space in the frame. And it's both are totally valid depending on, you know, what's the scene, what's the story, what's appropriate for this.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of ties into, like, you know, I'm looking at some of our things here, and it talks about what is some advice for the showcase. And for those of you watching, if you have not gone and seen, we just posted our top 5 in the past few days. And, you know, it's the benefit you get every week in an acting class where you get to watch your peers in the frame and go, oh, I see how this worked. Because everything we're talking about, you know, you talk about making big choices, and obviously our job is also to make sure that they're technically proficient within that framework, so that you still feel like you know the frame with which you're playing within, and then you can just go. But they're really, if you have not watched them, a great thing to check out, because it shows you kind of the best advice for what to do in a showcase, right? To really make it about the person in front of you, which, especially when you're nervous and other eyes are on you and you're curious of that opinion. My favorite thing in this scene is when I'm not thinking about myself. In fact, when I am thinking about myself, I'm not in it and I'm not having a good time, and I'm actually not doing my job, you know?
Yeah. I think the advice, okay, the advice, yeah, this is a good, what is the advice? Breathe. Let's start really practical. I always ask an actor, are you breathing? Because if you're not breathing, no impulse is going to be able to, nothing's going to be able to land on you, and no impulse is going to be able to come, like, spring forth from you, right? Because if you're holding your breath, then the body is in contraction. And you know, some people think about, they get stressed, I need to cry in this scene, oh my god, and they just tighten up thinking about, and I'm like, crying is a release.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be relaxed, we have to be breathing, we have to allow these emotional experiences, these words to impact us, to activate a memory, to activate a response. So we have to be breathing, we have to feel open.
Coach, I'm sure you deal with this, Susanna. When you say breathe, I'm sure you have actors do what they do to me, which is like, I'm here, I'm breathing, of course. Can you just specify, because I love that note, it's the most important thing, what you mean by the breath, especially when you're nervous?
Yeah, so when we're nervous, we tend to tighten up, right? It's kind of like when we're cold. You know, we walk home, we all live in Toronto. I don't know, if you're coming in from Canada, you know what winter's like. You know, the body contracts, right? And so when we get nervous, it's very protective. So the same thing happens as our chest tightens, we go into this kind of adrenalized protective space, and we tend to start, you know, I don't know where people can see me, but the breath goes into about here, right? And so we're kind of like, we're really in our head, we're having all these thoughts, you know, except for the armpits that are sweating, but like all the energy in the body is like coming up to the head, and fast. We tend to be on a faster tempo. Our thoughts are racing, and, you know, we might be a bit shaky. We don't want to hold a paper, you know. And so with the grounding, that's why I say I need to send my awareness down to my feet. I need to like pull the energy like down back into the body. I need to, is my abdomen like clenched? Like, am I trying to do a core workout right now? Because actually I should breathe and let the belly expand a little bit and be like, that's full oxygen. And, you know, we can do things like, you know, taking a deep breath and counting to 4. And these are hacks, right? Because if we start physically doing this, we will alter the space that our mind is in, because we start oxygenating the body, and it starts, you know, chemically going, oh, we're a bit more relaxed now. Oh, we're not in this like highly activated kind of fight or flight place. We're actually doing these things that allow us to create the chemical reaction to calmness, or, you know, we're okay, and we can work against the kind of everything's up here. So
especially TV and film, actors in this frame, like we're from here up sometimes too much.
Yeah, so much, right? So are we breathing into the belly? Are we connect? Do we remember we have legs? You know, can we feel our legs? You know, because they're supporting us while we're standing in this frame. You know, something I'll say to actors is, are your arms allowed to come to the party? You know, or is it like, you know, I warn people against like Service Ontario photo acting where it's like, I'm doing my scene and I'm not moving any part of my body below my collarbones because I was told on television that I shouldn't move.
Yeah.
Well, first, who told you that? That's a lazy direction
Mm-hmm.
because people move, right? But it's being aware of what size frame am I in? What is the scene about? These kinds of things. So breathing, for sure. I always tell actors, if you hear action, it's not a race. It's not a gunshot off. You don't have to sprint, right? Action, what is the first thing you do as an actor? Breathe. Just breathe.
I like the word sprint because it makes me think, actually, my final piece of advice on the showcase, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I can imagine when you're going to that space, you hope for this as well. Again, you want everyone to succeed. You're on their side just as their instructors do. But this whole idea of let me just get through it, rip it off like a Band-Aid, and then I did the thing, check. And it's like, you know, especially, let's look at a real audition. You get 24, 48 hours if you're lucky. And then you go into that space and you kind of, I always say it's like a car crash. Like, you know, something happened, like there was some, but you don't know like how or really why. Yeah, and then, you know, for me, what lights a fire in my belly is I'm like, no, I spent my valuable time preparing this audition. I got excited about it. Why am I going in, apologizing for existing, doing nothing but rushing through my take and walking out? And, you know, I feel like, again, you can speak to this better, but when you're in that space, you want to see people take up space and commit to the choices, especially because you're not just showing 24 hours of prep, you're showing 12 weeks of progress.
Yeah.
And then for you watching, it's like exciting when you see someone commit to a choice and people are like, is it good or bad sometimes? And I'm like, well, what's worse is being boring, you know?
That's the wrong fear to have. Like early in my career, I tried so hard to give them what they want. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know. I think they want a performance like this, like, because I've seen this on television. And I was so focused on trying to imagine what casting wanted that I was going against my gut instincts about how I would play that role. And what I realized in the more actors, the more tapes I watch, and I've cast my own projects, like I've been a casting person, I don't care if you make the wrong choice, whatever that means. I want to see you make a choice.
Because you can redirect your choice.
Redirect, you go, actually, can we adjust? Can we do, what about try this? But acting is collaborative with the director. I don't want someone who's not making any choices and they just want to be told what to do. I want to see an actor go, this is my interpretation. Especially like you said, there's, you know, we're coaches at the studio. There's certain scenes that I've seen 50 times, maybe 100 times. And then suddenly an actor will do a scene that I know line by line. And it's like I've never seen it before.
And you're inspired. You know, you don't have this preconceived idea of how it has to go.
I want to watch what happens next. How did this person interpret it? They made such personal choices, such specific choices that, you know, the biggest error, I think, is we make our work general because we're just copying what we see on television rather than personalizing our choices, knowing our actions. You know, what does your character want? Not how do they feel as a part of it, but you're an actor. Your job is to play actions in pursuit of a want. So that's my other big advice for our showcases, like everything, is you have to be really clear on what the character wants and how they're going to try and get it. And do they win or do they lose? And how they win and lose as the scene progresses. Oh. So I mean, I could just, like, the advice I have for showcases is the advice I have for, I teach it all term long in my classes, right? It's the same stuff. It's not different for showcases, except, you know, I would say trust your choices. You know, make choices. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
Because there's so many great actors who can technically tell the story. Why should I hire you?
Mm-hmm. So
right?
True.
It's not just about technique, because there's so many competent actors. It's also about interpretation.
Yeah.
You know? So I could talk about this forever. So I
Well,
know
it's
we
funny
have
because as
some.
you're going, I'm like the advice thing, and that's why I encourage everyone to go check out the top showcases because Susanna, what you're saying is brilliant, and these are all beautiful nuggets. But you're right, there's a million moving pieces to it that
Right.
you learn throughout the course. I'm excited. You know, I saw Susanna at the studio today, which you currently are at. Our summer term started today, and I even just in revisiting this, even though I just selected our last top showcases, I'm so excited to see the next top showcases from summer term. You know, it is the end of May, believe it or not. We start our summer term today, and it's one of my favorite terms by way of how spread out things are. You know, we have classes starting in every single month of it.
Yeah.
We have June starting classes. We have our youth classes starting in July. Things running through August. Like we just have so much to offer and some other stuff up our sleeve that we'll be talking about. But what I hope, and I can quickly go over some of our little Q&As for you and I to touch on before we log off, Susanna. But I'm hoping that everyone's feeling as excited as I think we both are, ramping up to a showcase, ramping up in a term, as opposed to letting it be that like, oh my goodness, that's the holy grail. That's terrifying. You know what I mean?
Yes, we have to, when we are a working actor, the majority of our time is going to be auditioning. We have to make friends with it. We have to get as excited by it. We have to go, this is my opportunity to play this part for this 10 minutes or this 7 minutes or whatever. I get to be, this is my show. This is how I envision the character. And casting wants to see you as an actor. They can adjust the character. And again, maybe they go, wow, we're not going to cast her for that, but holy hell, she is going to be great in this other project we're casting. Let's bring her in for that.
Or
right?
another role, right?
Or
Like in the same project.
role.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. It's like inspiring, and it's inspiring when people just show up and commit with that courage. Easier said than done to the work.
It takes
Um,
practice. We get braver the more we do it. We trust ourselves. We learn from our mistakes, and we know we can, it just takes practice.
yeah. No, I exactly. And keeping the perspective, like we are artists, we're not, our job is very important, but like, you know, if I mess up at work, the worst that happens is I go, that didn't work for me, you know? Now, speaking of the summer term, people were talking about, for, you know, those that are international, on this call, virtual classes. We actually, this evening, I'm hopping on my own virtual, session. We do one-on-one coachings virtually. So for anybody who has inquiries about that, feel free to reach out to us here or to the office. Our website has all that information, which is just armstrongactingstudios.com. Now, this next question kind of ties into the industry standard part, Susanna, of how do we become an actor in the industry, which is not a cut and dry answer, but I don't know if you want to take the lead on that.
It can be different. There are many paths in. I'll speak to one path, which is typically in order to access unionized projects, which are guaranteed to have a certain level of standard. They have standard pay. They have certain protocols. They're the biggest projects. They're the professional projects. They're the projects you see on television. Typically, to access auditions for those projects, you need to be signed by an agent. You need to have professional representation. So the kind of pathway to auditioning and being on a Netflix series, an Amazon Prime, a CBC show, is that you sign with an agent who is committed to representing you, to getting you opportunities, to getting you auditions, and they have access to casting directors and the breakdowns. And so they are really your team player. They are your main collaborator in terms of the industry. The piece of so how do I get an agent? How do I get an agent is you need to train. You need to first test out, do I like acting? Is acting for me? And then you need to dedicate a solid amount of time to training, to coaching, to understanding, attending industry workshops, getting familiar with the industry, but also the craft of acting, which is our focal point here at the studio. So I would suggest sign up for a class, take a class, have an industry consultation at the studio, get a sense of where your work is sitting, what you need to be working on, get a sense of where your work sits in relation to a competitive product, and train.
That's why I bring up the NHL. Acting is one of those very few industries. I think because it's so accessible to us on all our devices, we all look at it. We think that looks easy because it's the greats that do it. I can do that, and we don't think about, wait, if I were to do anything else, I would need all this all this training behind me under my belt instead of just, I decided I want to be an actor. I want an agent. I trained for years before I had an agent. And I am so grateful I did, because then the casting directors that still know me today saw me when at least I knew what I was doing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I trained in theater and I didn't really understand film and television acting. And I look back on some of my first film and TV auditions and like, God bless those casting directors who still see me, because I did not understand the medium. I understood how to build a performance, but I did not understand how to locate it in the frame. And those are the two major concepts that we teach here at Armstrong, specifically for some of our theater actors who come in and they're like, oh my God, everything is theatrical and I don't know what I'm doing. And then their self-confidence goes down because they know what they're doing in theater, and then they feel like they can't do it on camera because it's confusing and different. You can jump mediums, right? So the biggest thing is I work with a lot of clients who they really want to get an agent, and I want to help, I want to help them. I want to help them train towards that moment. But we have to be careful. We have to not go before we're ready. There's no rush. The tricky thing is agents get hundreds of submissions every day, and if they open your package, that's a huge win. And then if they watch your footage and it's not competitive, one, they're not going to call, they're not going to reach out, and two, they might not look at your stuff again for 2-3 years.
Or yeah, they say come back in a couple of years and you go, oh my gosh, I'm now waiting longer because I jumped the gun on this. So
it's about knowing the moment to jump in there, right? But it's different for everyone. But that's
great.
Kind of yeah.
No, I love that. That's a really great kind of way around it, because there's so many different avenues. And, there's a question here just before our final one about finding open casting calls. And the reality is that what Susanna is saying is the most trusted, tried and true way. I don't feel comfortable ever pointing an actor, nor would I ever in a direction of a project or where to find an open call, because I have no idea, especially depending on union or non-union. Obviously union sets we are protected on those sets. So having an agent, they can help you navigate those things in a way that, like, we at this studio, despite, we talked about industry consultation, and our director of partnerships and development, Shaylin Griffin, that's what she works on. But at the end of the day, we are in the industry, but we teach the craft. We don't teach the industry. That's just part of it. That's why we are working actors, right?
Yeah, we have to be very, very careful. I would always caution actors, you have to be very discerning. A lot of people can exploit the fact that actors or models, they want to get famous, they want opportunities. And there are a lot of, ACTRA does a lot of work to educate performers. It's worth checking them out, to just like some red flags you should be aware of if there is an acting opportunity posted online. You have to be really discerning about, is this a credible person? Is this a safe environment? Is this just a phishing scam? Like, there are some amazing opportunities out there, but I wouldn't know where to point to, except I would start by reading, what are the set of practices that ACTRA approves of, that the unions approve of, so that you can really educate yourself and protect yourself from being taken advantage of or ending up in a scenario where you feel unsafe or, and there's no advocate for you.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's really important. The final question is kind of like a nice full circle moment, but the question being, is a top showcase an audition, which is, we could interpret it in a couple different ways. So yeah, I don't know what you hear when you hear that question.
I guess the way that I could say, like, yes, it is an audition in that it's practicing the art of auditioning.
Yeah.
Not an audition where you're going to get a role or you're going to get money for it, sadly. But in a more practical way, studio related, it is an audition. You are auditioning in a sense for me, the artistic director, to see your skills. And again, as we said, a very practical aspect of it is if in your showcase or your audition, if you want to think of it that way, I'm seeing your work is meeting and like, what's the word? Going beyond. Yeah, exceeding the expectations of what we hope a student will learn at any level of training at the studio, then that's the invitation will then come for you to train at a higher level, train with more difficulty in terms of concepts and applications. So it is an audition in a sense for me to see where I think your work is sitting, and whether or not you're ready to handle more challenge or to dig in some more difficult material, some meatier stuff, some longer, longer scenes and more challenging material for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yes,
I think it's a great answer, because what you just made me think of in that moment was, yes, it simulates how competitive this industry is, which is you don't just complete the course and move up. It's that thing of, yeah, where do we feel you are at when Susanna's in that room watching that performance, and you feel when you do go up and you feel like you've exceeded those expectations, that you've really earned that, That's great.
And I'd always premise that with like, it's also just my opinion, like, yes, I have 6+ years at this studio, and, lots and lots of, I've seen hundreds of showcases. So I'm pretty good at sensing which is really flying. But like anything in acting, what matters most is that you find the coach that really helps you. You find the process that really helps you. You take the feedback that really resonates with you, and it's your path. You might get feedback from me and it might not resonate with you at all. Or maybe in 2 years, you're like, oh my God, I understand what that means now. But it's just, you're always going to be encountering different directors, different casting directors. And yes, everyone's going to have an opinion on your work. And it's important for you to be able to separate yourself from your work so that you can receive that feedback, which sometimes can be difficult. But still not take it in like, oh, I did good or I did bad. It's really about what's in the frame. You're a person, and you're unique and special and important and wonderful and brave and courageous. And also there's work in the frame, and we're talking about the work, So I just say that because it's very easy in this industry to kind of blur those lines between our own sense of self and what is appearing in the frame.
Yeah, make it feel personal. No, that's a very good reminder. I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you. I could talk to you all day about all these things.
Gosh, time just flies. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
It does. Yeah, well, it's a great conversation always with you also, because it's we find ourselves down different avenues, and it's just so inspiring to talk about the work and these wonderful artists who have tuned in. With that, I will say, if people have additional questions or anything, please feel free to send us a DM or reach out to the office. We're here to support and to help and to answer any questions. As our term is quickly, it's underway and those remaining courses are filling, I really hope to see new faces around the studio, returning faces, as we often do a Susanna reference, from the IOC level up to CA5. And yeah, I'm excited to see our showcases at the end of it. So thank you, Susanna, truly.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I look forward to working with you.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Have a great night. And yes, thanks for watching. Okay, bye, Susanna.
Bye.